Welcome everybody. I am the air quotes comedian, the man who can't say the word phenomena, fuck it. And this is the Polemics podcast. Welcome. Writing jokes is very much like waiting for a bus. You just stare at the page for ages and then all of a sudden 3 come along at once. But then you realise buses aren't inherently funny. Plus, they're all headed to Colchester and I wanted to go to Howe Green. Howe Green is a real place that just has a funny name. You can already imagine the people that live there going around all day long saying, "How green is my valley," and then laughing hysterically at their own cleverness. I quite like funny or odd names. The other day I was driving to work listening to NPR and the news came on, right? One of the correspondents' names was Ping Pong. I'm not making this up, and I wanted to say something funny about it without being racist. All I could come up with was, I wonder if my own name, Patrick O'Connor, if my own name was spoken in other countries, whether it would come off as odd or even funny. For instance, when my name is spoken aloud in England, it roughly translates to potato-loving Irish cunt. What do you think? Task failed successfully on the racism front? If you think that, then basically you're wrong. You see, what I was doing, right, was calling English people racists. And although some English people are indeed racist, at least they're generally polite when they're doing it. I say, my Pakistani friend, if you'd please pack your bags and return to Islamabad, that would be spiffing, what? Now, I do apologise if you're a bit confused as to what any of this has to do with Boris Johnson, and I'm happy to explain it to you. You see, what happened was that I wanted to write a routine about the industrial carceral complex, but 4 pages in my brain was like, this is a crappy script. Write a routine where you take the ever-loving piss out of Boris Johnson instead. And then my brain helpfully dropped 4 or 5 jokes into my lap. But the problem was I couldn't finagle 2 of the jokes into the bit about Boris Johnson, which is coming up. So, you know, what a comedian does when this happens is I use all the jokes, even the disparate ones, but cleverly connects everything up utilising smooth transitions to get from waiting for a bus to ping pong to the bit where I accuse the English of being racist by using racism myself in an ironic way, to then saying that Boris Johnson is objectively racist. And thus we arrive at the part of the comedy routine where I say Boris Johnson is objectively racist, and I get to utilise the remaining jokes. You know who else is racist? That's right, Boris Johnson, a man whose party, the Conservatives, was only elected because the British press demonised Jeremy Corbyn while anthropomorphising Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson reminds me of Dorothy's companions in The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. Very much like the Scarecrow, he is missing a brain, because if he had a brain, he'd do a better job of hiding his blatant corruption. And very much like the Tin Woodman, he is missing a heart, as evidenced by alleged statements like "let the bodies pile high," referring to the exorbitant death toll due to his ineffectual, feckless response to a pandemic. And, much like the Cowardly Lion, Boris Johnson is infested with fleas. That's not a slander, just in case you are wondering. It was a metaphor for all of Boris Johnson's supporters. When Boris Johnson dies, possibly from an incurable venereal disease, I hope they do a necropsy. Yes, I do know the difference between an autopsy and a necropsy, thank you very much. That's the joke, isn't it? Me saying Boris Johnson is something other than a human being. That's it, that's the whole joke. Alright, it's only part of the joke. I can lie just as well as Boris can. Anyway, I hope they do a necropsy on Boris Johnson. Now, what they'll need for Boris Johnson's necropsy is a scanning tunnelling microscope, a device used to examine objects on the atomic scale, because that's how small his sense of decency is. Having searched for his sense of decency with a scanning tunnelling microscope and coming up short, it might be time to use a different machine, one that can look for objects on the subatomic scale. See, what I'm saying, right, is that Boris Johnson's corpse should be put into the Large Hadron Collider, accelerated to near light speed and blown apart to see if the detectors can find any evidence that he had a sense of decency. Having found nothing of the sort, the only scientific conclusion that can be reached is that no, in fact, Boris Johnson had no decency at all. The only possible inference we can make is that Boris Johnson is very much like some vomit sitting atop some rank rotting rubbish in a dustbin. Not just any vomit though, it's Tory vomit sitting atop a maggot-filled pile of rubbish in a dustbin behind Waitrose. But it's not just a Tory vomit, it's the kind of vomit a Tory does after a full night of heavy drinking, a night full of orally pleasuring their corporate lobbyists, a night topped off with a vindaloo from the Taj Mahal curry house. Yes, Boris, the Taj Mahal curry house has flock wallpaper too, but it probably didn't cost £850 a roll. In a rare moment of reflection, I wonder if using the stereotype of flock wallpaper in an Indian restaurant is racist against buildings that sell a microcosmic anglicised version of another country's cuisine. Well, I didn't go back and edit it out, did I? So I guess it's okay. Anyway, I've got to go. My bus is here. I'm off to Howe Green, where I'm going to spend the entire day going up to the residents there and saying, "How green is my valley?" and laughing hysterically at my own cleverness. Hey, remember in that other podcast I did where I said I never do calls to action? Calls to action being things like be sure to like the video, leave a comment, share the video, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell, give me your firstborn so I can coat them in breadcrumbs and deep fry them for my supper. That's calls to actions. I said I'd never do calls to action on this channel, but very much like Boris Johnson, I lied. So, dear viewer, my call to action is that you hit the dislike button. Shit, I missed the fucking bus.